One area that I am still wondering about when it comes to assessment in the CLD student is when to consider special education. So I did do some research of special education in the CLD student. First of all, when to consider special education, CLD students are at a greater risk of being misidentified, mislabeled, and miseducated in our schools. Some questions to consider would be, does the student demonstrate any characteristics of a learning disability? Does he or she demonstrate characteristics of a language disability? In English? In their primary language? What experiences, other than a disability, might account for a lack of proficiency in either language? What is the student's language history? What is the socio-linguistic environment at the student's home and school? What educational opportunities has the student already had? What particular instructional practices have been used with the student? Some facts: Hispanic students continue to be overrepresented in special education programs. African American and American Indian students, especially males, are overrepresented in programs for learning disabilities and behavioral disorders. African American, Hispanic, and American Indian students are typically underrepresented in programs for the gifted and talented. Racial and ethnic minorities are more likely to experience poverty, which is a factor in special education referrals and placements. When CLD student needs are not recognized at the instructional level, they are unlikely to be recognized or addressed during the intervention process. Teachers tend to rely on oral language proficiency as an indicator of academic performance. Students acquiring a second language often exhibit academic, attention, and behavior difficulties that are similar to those of students with a learning disability. Despite the range of considerations necessary to determine genuine educational disability, assessment teams often make decisions based on insufficient information or use of standardized assessments that are not developed, normed, or administered appropriately for CLD students. So be careful. When non-disabled CLD students are misidentified and placed in special education settings, they are denied opportunities of their regular classroom. A special education pull-out classroom could be a more restrictive setting that could constrain their learning. But on the other hand, CLD students that may be denied consideration for services because of a language barrier may not be receiving an appropriate education due to lack of proper assessment and evaluation. Something else to consider is that when the CLD student is removed from the grade level classroom for special education programming, those left behind are denied a diverse experience that complement their learning. So in summary, insufficient background information often leads to inappropriate placement and expectation. Teachers who do not identify or draw on a student's funds of knowledge overlook opportunities for the student to participate and understand. Pressure on teachers to prepare students to take high-risk tests often prompts teachers to provide grade-level and not differentiated instruction. Instruction that does not accommodate the language proficiency of a CLD student allows them to be unsuccessful in learning the content area material. Teachers who do not understand the impact of acculturalization on CLD students are more likely to misinterpret these students' difficulties of a learning or behavior problem. Our textbook included some great information that I wanted to encourage you to look at. On page 234 in Chapter 7, Figure 7.1 shows typical characteristics of both English speakers and a learning disability and a second language learners without a disability. Pages 239 to 241 has an exploration of student history and some questions that are great to ask and consider. In addition, on page 250, there's a Venn diagram that has a comparison of CLD and special education accommodations. I will be taking photocopies of these pages to my school to consider the 2 students that their classroom teachers would like to be evaluated for special education. Thank you for listening, and please message me with any other questions you may have.